Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we are doing the third episode of King Reviews. Today I'm going to be reviewing Gran Turismo 6. There seems to be a lot of focus on Gran Turismo over the last couple of weeks, but yeah, it seems to be one of my, it's always been one of my favourite racing game series of all time. It was one of the first racing games I ever played, was Gran Turismo 4, and that's what made me into the car guy that I am. So Gran Turismo is a bit of a soft spot in my heart. But today we are reviewing Gran Turismo 6, the good and the bad, and is it as good as the previous games? So first of all, let's start off with the good things. The car list in Gran Turismo 6 is amazing. It's the best car list of the Gran Turismos from Gran Turismo 4, 5 and 6, as it's got a lot more cars in it from 4 and a couple more cars from 5. There's many different vehicles, even Gran Turismo Vision vehicles began in Gran Turismo 6. And yeah, there's many different vehicles, all transferred from Gran Turismo 4 and onwards. We didn't lose any cars apart from, I think it was the FPV series. I think it was the only cars we ever lost from memory from Gran Turismo 4. But all the rest were carried over to the next games. It's one of the best car lists I've ever seen. The Gran Turismo series throughout those years. It's definitely got to be hands down one of the best car lists ever. Although Forza Horizon 4 is beginning to sort of catch up with Gran Turismo now, as it's got a lot of rare cars in Forza Horizon 4. But then Gran Turismo 4, 5 and 6 is very, very rare cars in it too. As I say, it's one of the best car lists I've ever seen. It's just unbelievable. It's so diverse as well. It's no stupid Lego cars or anything like that. It's just old Japanese cars from the 80s and 90s, and then modern European cars and modern America, classic America. It's just so diverse. One second you could be driving a CVT Yaris, or you could be driving a Lamborghini Reventon. It's absolutely amazing. I love it, and the fact it's got these quirky compact cars, these old 1980s like the Japanese cars, like the Honda City. I think it's a Honda City Turbo, and they're cool little cars. It's quite nippy actually. Um, but yeah, it's just really, really cool to see these awesome old cars that you would never have heard of unless they're in this game. Or even considered driving them as well. But they just encourage you to drive them in this game because it's the nature of the game, and it's fantastic. The next good thing about this game is the customization, especially versus Gran Turismo Sport. Gran Turismo Sport had one of the worst car customizations I've ever seen, as it was some sort of slidey bar and purchase packages. It was quite weird. Where Gran Turismo 6 it wasn't quite as in-depth as Gran Turismo 4, I felt, but it was quite good. You had like weight reduction, carbon fiber bonnets, like interior strips out, even though it didn't seem to make any difference if you're in first person. But you can do different types of air filters. You have different types of exhausts. You can get titanium exhausts or steel exhausts or stainless steel exhausts. There's all sorts of different things you could do, and it was fantastic. Also, this game introduced that the pod dials you could stick on the interiors and different things like that. It was absolutely fantastic. Really good customization. It's such a shame we lost that when it came to Gran Turismo Sport. The next good thing about this game is the story. The story is pretty good. They have carried it over from all the other games. The story has been pretty much the same throughout the Gran Turismo series, apart from Gran Turismo 4 had more diverse stories to it. It like different sections, like the special series. Then you had the professional and beginner. The special ones were if you crash into a wall or crash into your opponent, you get like penalties, you 5-second penalties, and that was quite interesting. I like doing them. And you won a car per per reverse and forward versions of that track, and then it went from easy, medium, and hard. And also you had the driving missions, but they were really hard. I could only do about 4 of them, but I lost interest in them in the end. But Gran Turismo 6 does have the story. It does have a good story. It's got a few championships you can do. It's pretty much the same stories like the pickup truck series and the Sunday Cup and a couple other things like that. The supercar series. It's mostly the same as the other games, but that's good because it's just how it rolls. You can use different cars. You can explore different cars. You can just it's really good. Really a good story versus especially versus Forza. The good part of the stories of Gran Turismo is that you do start off with small cars. The only downside is with this game is that you couldn't choose your car at the start of the game. Gran Turismo 4, I think even with 5, you was given a certain amount of money. He was given like a £10,000 budget or something like that at the start of the game, and you choose a car and you use it. And often, a lot of the time, it'd be really cheap cars. It'd be like I don't know. But my first car in Gran Turismo 4 was the Mitsubishi Galant. I don't know what my first car was in Gran Turismo 5, but Gran Turismo 6, you wasn't given that option. It was, as soon as you loaded in, you was given the Fit RS. Whatever you wanted to do, that was it. You was given the Fit RS, which is a bit of a shame, but still, you still start off at this low Fit RS rung of the ladder, and then you work your way up to the Reventons and the full GTs and the Aston Martins and all that lot, which is fantastic. It's a better way of doing it than what Forza does. And it's an enjoyable story nonetheless. Also with the story, we got you do win cars from accumulating a certain amount of stars. I think if you've completed each segment of races, there'd be like beginner, professional, and then you'd have a certain amount of races to complete, and if you get first, you get 3 stars, and then after a certain amount of stars, you get a new car. So that was a really good system, but I'm not sure that worked just as well as the Gran Turismo 5 did, which is when you completed a series, you got a car. Even if it wasn't that good, you got a car. But I'm not so sure. I'm not sure which one worked out better, but I do quite like the 5 story better than the 6 one, just a little bit. The next good thing about this game was the difficulty. I say this is one of the easiest games of the 3 of 4, 5, and 6 because Gran Turismo 4 had some of the hardest races I've ever played, ever, and I lose interest in it in certain occasions because it was just blatantly too difficult. There'd be occasions where you would choose like the best car, but others have chosen the best car, but they've tuned it up. Well, I don't tune up my cars, I like to have them standard. So it makes it a bit more difficult for myself unless I make a donor car to tune up and then sell later on. But and also there's other occasions where in Gran Turismo 6 there was a bit of a problem where it cheated. There was a British lightweight series I seem to remember. You wasn't allowed to use the light company rocket, but the players you're up against could use it. So that made it a little bit difficult and a bit cheating. I didn't like that very much, but I think Gran Turismo in the past have suffered from that every now and again. They throw a hard car in there and you can't really beat it unless you're shooting your car up or you're a good racer, which it does kind of suck, but I think we should all be on the same playing field. If these are the parameters of the race, this is how it should be. The sad thing with Gran Turismo Sport, it was the same sort of thing, but Gran Turismo Sport allowed you to detune cars and things. I thought that was a bit rubbish, so... But I think it's because there wasn't so many cars in that game, it did sort of force players to have to use more cars than the small car list they had, so they could enjoy it a bit more. But Gran Turismo 6 didn't really suffer from that, just sort of cheated a bit by throwing in cars that you couldn't use and you had to be up against. But the difficulty itself wasn't too bad. I managed to get gold in most stuff. All the career mode I got gold in. All the licenses I got gold in. All the sort of Goodwood hill climbs I got gold in. The only thing I didn't get gold in was the Ayrton Senna tribute. I only got silvers in them, it just got too difficult in the end. So that's what I did like about this game, is that it was difficult. It was really difficult. It got on my nerves a lot, this game. But it was, because the races weren't too long, it did make it a bit more motivational to get the gold. But yeah, it wasn't too bad. It's still really hard in some places, but obviously not as hard as previous games. Like Gran Turismo 5, I remember doing the Mercedes, I think it was the special events, I think they were called. We had like the NASCAR, Mercedes driving experience, and the Top Gear driving circuit, and a couple of other things in Gran Turismo 5. And some of them were really difficult, really difficult. I remember driving a 300 SL on the Nürburgring. I couldn't get past it, getting a gold. But luckily in this game, don't really suffer from that too much. It's only just the Ayrton Senna stuff that I didn't get. Going back on the story, there's a few things that I do like about this game. It's the diverse things you can do as well. Having the moon landing thing was a bit mad. It's definitely a bit crazy. But it was interesting nonetheless. But the thing is, normally I'd whinge about that because it's not very realistic. But because it had it in a separate thing, unlike the Lego DLC in Forza Horizon 4, it didn't intrude in the gaming experience elsewhere. It was just sort of, oh, this is a little bit of fun for you, have a play of it, and then go back to realism and good stuff later on, like separately. So that was a fantastic way of doing it, and that's how Forza should have done the Lego DLC in my eyes. The next thing I like about this game is the physics and handling. I think it's the same physics engine as Gran Turismo 5, and they're quite enjoyable physics. Again, it's like Gran Turismo Sport, where it's designed for everyone. Anyone can jump in and play, and I do like that. It's very easy to drive and very easy to just get used to the game. The downside is that the traction can be a little bit intrusive, where you can't do donuts, you can't drift very often. Unless you turn the traction control off, and then it's all right. But sometimes traction control can be a little bit too strong. But apart from that, not too bad at all. Really good physics, very enjoyable. Another good thing about this game is that all the cars are purchasable through the dealership. This is the first game to actually do that, I think, from memory. Gran Turismo 4, you did have a used cars and you did have dealerships. The trouble is with that as well, is that with Gran Turismo 4, some cars were locked behind barriers, if the words I use, where you could have to get a gold in a certain event to win that car. And unfortunately, it was so difficult. I didn't manage to get any. I didn't manage to get all the cars in the game. Some cars I didn't get was like the Ford Model T and the Bentley Speed 8, because they were either in 24-hour races or they were in really hard licenses that I couldn't simply do. So sadly, I just didn't unlock it. It was as simple as that. Didn't have the skill. I couldn't develop the skill, so I didn't get it. And that's what I find sad when games do that. What I liked about Gran Turismo 6 is that everything was unlockable. But anything that was unlockable, you could also purchase. So that made it really good, because it's sort of, if you knew what you won, so if you looked online, you found out what you won, then you wouldn't buy it, and then you was like, yes, I'll work towards that car. I can win that car. Or if you didn't, or if you couldn't do it, then you think, okay, I didn't succeed, I didn't win it for free, so now I want to buy it from the dealership. And it may be to encourage people to actually win it for free, to actually do the career and get good at the career, then the car should be quite expensive. This similar sort of system works in Gran Turismo Sport. We had the Lamborghini Veneno. That was a really expensive car. If you got the golds and the licenses, you win it for free. And so that's a good system of how it should work. But Gran Turismo 6, similar sort of thing, but it wasn't expensive, so it worked out really well. The good thing is, as well, with the cars being all purchasable, is that if you're like myself, who purchases all cars in all games, that's what I work for. I go do money making methods and get all the cars, and use them later on. It's good that it's not in a used car dealership in a way, because then you don't have to wait for the certain car to turn up, especially when you're sort of near the last couple of cars and they're all in the used cars dealership. It makes it difficult to predict how much they're worth, so you can't sort of work up to a certain amount of money and then find out how much you need to earn. Also, that you have to wait for it to turn up. I know on several occasions, if you needed a certain car to win a race and it was in the used car dealership, you had to just wait and wait and wait until it turns up, and that can be a little bit annoying. However, there is a bit of a problem that it doesn't have a used car dealership. We'll talk about that later. The next good thing, talk about money-making methods. The money-making method in Gran Turismo 6 was absolutely fantastic. The one I use is the Red Bull Challenge, one of the Red Bull X prototype races. And I use it on, I think it's the third championship, on Trail Mountain, I think it is one I use. You get about 124,000 per race, and it's 3 laps around that track, and in that car, on a good session, it takes about 3 minutes. So, and it works out to be just over 2 million an hour, which is absolutely fantastic money-making method. But then again, the cars in the game, so many of them, it's quite a lot of money. I think it ended up being over 400 million, something like that. I think it was 200 million for the premium detailed cars, and it was like another 200 million for the simplified cars. So yeah, there's a lot of money to make there. I'm halfway through it now at the minute. I'm working my way through it now, and I've got all the detailed cars, but I'm working my way through the standard cars or simplified cars. But the money making method is absolutely fantastic, and it's one of the best money making methods they've been, because mostly in the Forza Horizon 3 and 4, even Gran Turismo 5, it's sort of been maybe 1 million an hour, where now we're sort of doing over 2 million an hour, so you're doubling it. So it's fantastic, really good money-making method, and that's what I really like to see in Gran Turismo 7, was a good money-making method, because otherwise it just makes it take a long time to get all the cars. Another good thing about this game was the track list. The track list is quite good. You've got tracks like the Goodwood Festival of Speed, like the Goodwood Hill Climb, and there's quite a lot of the normal tracks you see in a lot of games, like the Brands Hatch, Nürburgring, Le Mans, or Le Sarthe, I think they call it. And that was really good to see, because some games really do suffer with the track list. I think Gran Turismo Sport didn't do so well with the track list, as at first anyway, because it didn't really have so many tracks in it. Especially the original circuit tracks, the ones that they made in the fake tracks, effectively. I like driving on the real tracks myself, but I know a lot of people appreciate the original tracks too. But the track list in Gran Turismo 6 is really, really good, and I do enjoy doing the Goodwood Hill climbs, and I also quite like the Sierra Rally. I know it's an original circuit, but it's a really nice track to drive on, and that's why I generally sort of take my cars to just have a bit of a drive. So, that's the good parts of the game, and there's quite a lot of good things about this one, but there are a few problems with it. One big problem is the car sounds. Yeah, I know it's an older game. I know I think it was 2012 this game came out, but the car sounds are not that good. If you especially compare it to Forza Horizon 2, which released around the same sort of time, the life cycle was around the same time, the car list is pretty poor. There's a lot of cars that don't sound right. For example, the BMW M3 E46 sounds like a V8. Which is all right for the GTR because it has a V8, but not for the standard one. It definitely does have a V8. So there's cars like that that really don't sound right, and unfortunately that is a big problem with this game. They're either very generic, very incorrect, or they just don't sound that good. I would say that I don't really know if it's whether this game sounds better than Gran Turismo. Whether Gran Turismo 6 sounds better than Forza Horizon 4, because Forza Horizon 4 does sound bad in some occasions, but it does have some really good sounding cars like the Ferrari F12 and the Audi R8. They sound really good, and the couple of cars do sort of sound generic, but they sound alright. The downside with Forza is that it's impaired by the fact that they did such good car sounds in the previous installment that it makes Horizon 4 feel like a downgrade. Where with Gran Turismo, the car sounds have never been fantastic, so it hasn't really felt the impact of the car sounds being bad has not been felt so great versus Forza. But still, the car sounds are not that good, nevertheless. Another problem with this game is the homologated, detailed, and simplified cars. A problem with this game, is, if you're like myself who plays in first person all the time, if, when you haven't got interiors, you've just got the silhouette. I prefer to be in third person. So I prefer to drive in first person, and I'd like to keep the simplified and the detailed cars separated, like they did in Gran Turismo 5. It was quite a good idea that if you bought a simplified car, it went in the simplified category in your garage. If you bought a detailed car, it went in the detailed sector of the garage. That was fantastic because you knew what you was going into when you selected the car. Because there are so many cars in the game, sometimes the pictures look like they're premiums when they're not, or look like standards when they're not. So it'd be great to see like a categorization of the two types of cars, and you just sort of know what you're going into when you select the cars. You think, oh yeah, I want to drive that car, but I understand it's a standard car, so I have to drive it in third person instead of going, oh, I'm going to drive that, and it turned out, it's in a simplified car, I have to go in third person. So it'd be nice to keep it separated, like they did in Gran Turismo 5. It was a perfect system. I don't know why they got rid of that. The only reason I think that why they got rid of it is they want to homologate them together, as sort of make it as if a combined car list rather than sort of separating it and making it seem sort of contrived. But yeah, I preferred it in Gran Turismo 5 myself. Another problem with this game, it's maybe a niggly thing, but a bit of an issue for me who buys all the cars in the game, is there's only 100 cars can be added to your favourites list, which is a bit of a problem when this game doesn't segment detailed and simplified cars. I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll stick all the premium cars in the favourites list and then keep the rest elsewhere. So the favourite list is sort of a direct access to the premium cars. Sadly, only 100 cars can do that, and I can't choose 100 cars out of 400. So yeah, I couldn't choose what my favourites would be. So that just doesn't really work for me. Also, the garage can only hold 500 cars, which isn't good with a game that has over 1,000 cars in it. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem for that game. So the way they've resolved it as well is having the storehouse or the warehouse, a storage facility somewhere you can put all your cars in. The trouble is with that is it takes forever to load. It takes forever to load up, and you then just give up in the end. You just think, oh, I'll select one car and that'll be about it, and I'll stick with the rest of the cars that are in the main garage. So it's a bit of a shame, but I suppose it's what the PS3 could do at the day. It's what the technical restrictions were. So yeah, unfortunately, this is one of the problems that the game has. Unlike GT Sport, well, I know the car list isn't very good, but when you go into the arcade mode and you just fancy to drive one of your cars, you can select all your cars from your garages. That's a really good system of how it should have worked in Gran Turismo 5 and 6. But there we go, so improvements have been made in the future games. Another problem with this game is the graphics and the rendering of simplified cars. Now I know they are simplified, but sometimes they do look a bit wrong. There's some cars in the game that they just look so out of place being standard. The windows aren't quite right, especially when you've got a standard car next to a premium car in the same race. Now some of the premium cars with the windscreen wipers working, good clear headlights, and then the other one don't. So it does sort of interfere with the continuity of the game. But of course they do tell you what it is, and you are expecting them to be simplified and premium, but it's not not a best factor of the game. I do prefer Gran Turismo 4 in the way that it has all the cars in the same playing field. All the cars are premium, well not premium, they're standard actually, because there's no interiors in Gran Turismo 4. But then all the cars are the same. There's no fear in buying any of the cars. Where in this one, there's a bit hit and miss. The other problem is, as I mentioned earlier, there's no used car dealership. Now, I know it makes it easier for purchasing all the cars, but it'd be nice to have a used car dealership alongside it as well. Because some people actually love used car dealerships, because I do as well. It's a great way of getting like discounted cars. It's a great way of sort of making it a bit more interesting, a bit more interactive with the game, because the cars come in colours already preset, and they've got a certain mileage on it, and you've got an oil change to do. And there's a bit more of a process to buying it rather than just buying it and driving it straight away. So it makes some people really enjoy it, and some people don't. I'm someone who's sort of on the fence. Yeah, I do enjoy it, but then if it's not there, I'm not so bothered. I just buy it from the used cars, or I just buy it from the main dealership. But yeah, it's just one of the little problems that it does have is that I think it's the first in the series from Gran Turismo 3 that doesn't have the used car dealership. And unfortunately, the used car dealership hasn't been carried on to Gran Turismo Sport, but there has been news that there might be a used car. I think we saw a used car dealership icon in the trailer, so that's good. They've actually got a used car dealership as well. Maybe might be able to get some rare cars from there. So yeah, there we go. That's my review of Gran Turismo 6. Obviously, with Gran Turismo 6, if you look on the reviews online, it doesn't score as high as Gran Turismo 5. I'm not sure whether it's as good as Gran Turismo 5. Gran Turismo 4 is one of the best Gran Turismos ever. It's the reason why I still play on the PS2 when I had the PS2, but I play on the PS3 backwards compatibility, backwards compatible PS3, because it's just such an epic game. Gran Turismo 5 was the successor of that game, and it scored better than Gran Turismo 6. I don't know why, but Gran Turismo 6 for myself has been an unusual one. I haven't actually been able to play it until the tail end of last year, 2020. The reason for that is it was such a big game that I couldn't play it because it was just such a big game. I'd have to delete all my other games, which would have been a bit tragic. I just didn't play it at all, and I just didn't play it at all. I've got Gran Turismo 5 instead. But now I've upgraded my PlayStation to have a 250 gig internal storage. I've been able to play it, and yeah, I can definitely see the improvements from Gran Turismo 5. There's the better cars, there's got some more events to do, and a couple of other things. But for some reason, Gran Turismo 5 still feels better. It's this intangible feeling that Gran Turismo 5 is just a little bit better. It's got a better feel to the whole atmosphere of the game. I don't know what it is, but it just, maybe it's nostalgia and rose-tinted glasses are doing it, but whether there's just something about the game that feels better, I'm not quite sure. But I think Gran Turismo 6 is a fantastic game. At the moment I'm playing it still. I'm still doing the money-making method almost every day to try and see if I can get all the cars. It's been a fun game to play, and it's definitely sort of a good time filler these days where I'm waiting for the PS5. And yeah, I think it's still quite a good game, but I'm not quite sure. If I had to choose between a Forza Motorsport or a Gran Turismo, which one I would have chosen if I'd never played either. But yeah, Gran Turismo 6, good game, but I'm not quite sure if it's quite as good as the predecessors. Gran Turismo 4 has always been my favourite, and it always will be until Gran Turismo 7 maybe come out. It's very similar, improved graphics, maybe similar to the car list. I don't know, we're all waiting to see for Gran Turismo 7. It might be my new favourite, but Gran Turismo 6 is pretty good. And it's still quite an enjoyable game, even after all these years it's come out. So thank you very much for watching this video today. Like, subscribe, do the usual, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.